in your groups too. And so I'm like, should
Yeah.
you do the introduction or should I do the introduction?
No, you should totally. I just was like, hey, I'm supposed to be repurposing content. Let's just stream it as we go.
I know. I love it. I love the supposed to be repurposing content. Well, welcome. So, Collab Chronicles in Collaboration Station. And today we're with Lizzie Jefferson of the Geeky Freelancer. And Lizzie, I've been waiting for this moment for a
Yeah.
while. Like sometimes I have these lined up and I'm like, oh, but I really want to talk to you. And like I've been wanting to talk to you for a really long time.
Oh,
So I'm happy today.
I'm glad. I'm happy too. Thanks for having me. This when you text or messaged yesterday, I was like, "Oh, yes, let's do that."
I know a little bit last minute Lucy this week, but I'm very excited to have the conversation because I have a feeling you have, I mean, I kind of already know, but you have a very cool story and a really cool thing you're currently doing with people and sort of a special I would love others to know about.
Ooh, I'm
Yeah.
excited.
Okay, good. Good. So, first of all, the question I ask everyone is tell me your story. Like, how did you end up in this seat today doing what you're
Yeah,
doing? And tell us a little bit about what actually are your superpowers.
sure, absolutely. So I'll try not to ramble too much. I'm a rambler. I love words, but I don't know when to stop using them. So, uh, I
I love that.
I spent right? Isn't it great? So going way back, I went to college to do something very different. I was a music therapy major for 2 years, but I had a brain thing, and so I got a little sick and had to come home, and I was very sad. And this is relevant to like 25 years later, but um, in that space, I decided to go searching for my big adventure, right? And I grew up in a small town where you do the thing, you have the framework and everyone does the thing and you are successful and there are measurable things that make you successful and so I was like I was always the good girl and I just didn't want to do that anymore, so I joined AmeriCorps, which
Oh,
is a national
my husband
volunteering
did
program.
that.
Did he? Where did he
Yeah.
do that?
He did it in
Yeah.
South Carolina.
Okay.
Like he
So I
yeah.
moved back to Indiana because I grew up in Ohio, but I was born in Indiana. And so I moved back to Indiana and I worked with Habitat for Humanity. And I worked as a volunteer coordinator the first year. And then the second year, I worked at the state level doing program coordination. And then I took a job with that. And so I did that for a couple years and I loved the giving back and all of that. But it was probably the first step in my I'm a nomad type lifestyle when it comes to work, because it didn't check all the boxes for me. So then I moved on and did some other things. I worked with student loans. I did some stuff with that. I did a lot of admin work, and so fast forward 20 years and I had managed vet clinics and I had spent 10 years as the practice director for this big ultrasound consulting place. And I was really good at my job. Like I would start jobs. I think it was the adventure. Like I would start a job entry level. I always started entry level because I had not finished my college education at that point. I'd taken lots of classes. I think I have like 1,000 and some hours of class
Premise.
at this
Yeah.
point because I love to learn. But right. But I always started entry level and then I would like move up right into these, and I always moved up because I found a solution to someone's problem. And I
Hmm.
loved that. But at the same time, I also loved like helping them write their manuals and write emails and all this stuff. So I'm working this life and my husband is in mortgages and 2008 happens and we all know what happened in 2008 and this big bubble bursts and we're watching TV and he says, "I think I don't have a job anymore because the national news just said that no one in mortgages has a job anymore." So they closed HSBC and I had to be okay with not not knowing that he was the big breadwinner, right? And he had to be okay with that. And so we started taking on like side jobs, right? Like we started doing things to make extra money. But we did it out of a place of kind of lack. Like, oh my gosh, we want to make sure we have money. We have to take care of ourselves. We have to make this work. We don't want to get in jeopardy with our house, all this stuff.
Mhm.
And so I started exploring side jobs, right? Like doing the side job, but they were always for someone else. Like I was cleaning for someone else. We did like we would go clean hospital because we'd like to do stuff together. So we'd go clean
Aw,
hospital,
you know, that is the
like
cutest thing ever.
right.
We would
We
do
would clean
side
stuff
jobs
together.
together.
Right. It
Aw.
was so fun. So we did the side hustle life while he started working. He's really he's really good at finding jobs because he's really smart and he's really competent. But he landed in self publishing, and this was before self publishing was a big thing, so it was a scary thing, but it was also a very commercially thing. And he started working for a group, and as he was working for them, these authors with really compelling stories would come to him and they would say, "Oh, I need to be edited." And then he would have to sell them these awful editing packages that were through the roof expensive. And so he came home one day and he was like, I can't do this to people. 'Cause he's kind of a good man. I'll keep him. And he said, "You should edit books." He's like, "You," I was like, "That makes no sense. You are a crazy man. I have not gone to school for English as a major. You know, it was a minor, it was all these things, but I didn't go to school to be an editor. I don't have 10 years of experience." And that's what jobs tell you, is that you have to have all of these things to help people, right?
Mhm.
Um, and he's like, "No, I want you to just help this lady." And she had a really compelling story. And so I sat down with her and I helped her edit her book. And I was like, "I love this. This could be a really fun side hustle." So I started helping people edit their books. We're getting there. I know this is a rambling story. I'll
I
get
am
to today.
completely entertained over here. Lizzie, when you
We're
talk, it's like the best story upon the best story.
oh,
So you can just keep talking, and I won't even ask you another question.
thanks. I'm just gonna ramble along here. We're at 2011 now, folks. 15 years to go. And so I was
I am keeping track of the years, by the way.
excellent, excellent. So at this point, I was working. I was managing vet clinics, and I was driving like hours and hours to get there. And so I was, and to get home. And it was we didn't have kids at the time, and so I had this like side thing that kept me it kept me engaged. It made me feel like I was giving value because I don't know anything about pets other than that I have them. And I was no help as a vet clinic manager other than I could manage systems, but
Mhm.
I could maybe hold a dog, but like I wasn't contributing anything. There were all these amazing
Mm,
people with all these talents, and I was just like sitting at a computer making sure we didn't go under financially,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
So this gave me a purpose. Like it gave me a thing that really it just jazzed me, and I was so excited, and I loved helping people. And I honestly I loved hearing their stories. I loved hearing people's stories. Um, I loved hearing about a lot of them had businesses, and so they were writing a book about their life, and they didn't realize that they could take that book and then make a brand out of it. So this, as an example, this first lady, her dad had been um, in a concentration camp. He was a survivor of a concentration camp, and with
Oh,
that came they moved. You know, he moved to America, and with that, she grew up in the trauma, the aftermath of that. And so had written her story and his story, and then she had started. She had a whole platform where she would go into schools and talk about anti-bullying movements and how we all have to stand
mm,
up.
wow.
And she wasn't connecting the two, right? Like you have this amazing story. The story is the whole reason you do what you do.
Yes,
So
exactly.
why aren't we putting that together? Why aren't we making it this big thing?
Ugh,
And I realized I didn't just want to tell people help people tell their stories. I wanted to help them make that into a movement, make that into something big, right?
mhm, mm.
Within that time, I decided I didn't want to drive to all god o'clock hours of the night to the middle of nowhere to manage these vet clinics, and so I switched to a new job, and it was. Do you need to get that? I know you have the things. Are you okay? Is
I
that
just got a call about the things.
okay? Do you want to
Um,
mute and I can talk, or do you want to just do this
yes.
later?
Yes, let's do that. Let's do
Let's do
that.
that.
Let's
Okay,
do that. You keep telling your story and just talk to people, and I'm gonna get
I'm
the
gonna
call,
do
and then I'll
that.
be right back.
All right, let's do
Okay.
that. Okay, so I took a job in this ultrasound place, and what attracted me to it was that they provided imaging and that they connected with hospitals in Indiana to provide like carotid imaging. They were in hospitals, but they were also out in these small clinics in the middle of nowhere. but um, they also had two other lines of business where they actually sold ultrasound systems, and then they were a national consultant to help other people build their business. So this checked all the boxes for me. It was a great place where I could help people and do all of the things. And again, I started entry level, and then within a year or so, I was helping them direct what they were doing, because that's how it's like figuring out the puzzles, and I love that. And those experiences are so important because during that time I was also doing the side hustle, right? I was doing the book thing and I was loving it, but then I wasn't loving it because again the puzzle had been solved. And I don't know, i I think it takes a special authors or artists, and telling their story is important, but it takes a special person. I was getting into fiction and not I started trying to help people I liked instead of staying true to what I wanted to do, which was help people build their businesses through their books. Um, and so I was doing the side hustle, and then my husband came home one day and he said, we had had a really horrible miscarriage when I was younger, and he said, I think we should consider fostering kids. There are too many kids out there that need a home. We're a biracial couple, which means that we have experiences and perspectives in our very suburban area that other people didn't have. And he said, so let's do that. So I said, okay, let's try that puzzle for a while. So we started fostering children, and at that point, I didn't know what I was getting into, and I didn't recognize that the level of trauma that would come into our house and our lives was something I wasn't ready to manage without taking it all on. And so it was the most rewarding part of our lives, but it was also harrowing. And so for 5 years, we had a combination of kiddos in our house. And at one time, we had like five, a teenager, and then four under the age of 4.5. And they all had very serious needs. And they just kept saying that these kiddos were going to go home. And so we would take more kiddos in, and then they wouldn't go home. And we were both working full-time jobs, and I had this side hustle, and it was all of the things that were just happening, and it was very stressful. um, and so the side hustle became this thing that I could manage. It was this thing I had control over. I didn't have control over my job. Like I was It was a job, someone else owned it. I was doing the work that they asked me to do. I had no control over what was happening with these babies that were coming into my space and leaving my space, and it was horrific. And the one thing I had control over was this little pocket of time in my life, and it made money. It made a little bit of money, but what was more important to me at the time is it it gave me something that I was contributing back. It was a way that I could help people. And so I continued to kind of evolve from just doing the story part, and I didn't have the time chunks that I had had before, where I could do the books and edit books very well, because that's a very intensive process. It takes a lot out of you, and I was giving that energy somewhere else. Hi, are you back? I'm just over here
Hi.
rambling.
And I was just sort of trying to listen, and I might get interrupted again,
Yeah,
and
no.
situations becoming more emergent, I guess.
Okay.
So
Do we need to stop this and maybe do it another time?
I think we can finish up because I have to wait for things to happen. So I would love to continue the
All right,
conversation.
let's keep going. You tell me when it's time to stop and we'll stop, okay?
Okay.
All right.
Sounds great.
So I'm in this place where I have these to catch you up. We're at 2016 now.
Oh,
I
I missed
have
5 years.
Right. It's okay. Not a lot happened during that time. I planned a trip to the east to see the my husband and I were going to go leaf peeping and see all the leaves, right? And then
Oh,
came home and was like, let's foster kids. And I was like, okay, I'll make a call. And they were like, you're in the class starting next week. And so we put our trip off because we were like, okay, well, apparently we're important and needed. No, but it just happened that way, right?
you
And
are.
but like before we were licensed, we had a placement because it was just the need was that big. And
Mm,
so we dove headfirst into this new world that I don't think, unless you've been in a space where you've taken care of someone else's kiddos because of a legal matter, I mean, I can't describe it. But again, I had no control over anything. And so my side hustle gave me this place where I could go and escape and contribute meaningfully, and know that the outcome was something that I could that I could have some influence over, right? Because there are these tiny babies coming into my house. Their traumas are things that I would never dream. You would just never dream. And so, and I can't keep them safe. I have to keep sending them places and then they come back and it's just a lot. And so at that point, the
Hmm.
side hustle wasn't about the money. It was about giving me an outlet, a space that I could, one, control, which is probably not healthy, but two, where I could affect change in a meaningful way.
Mhm.
And so I kept the side hustle going, but I did not have the time and the emotional energy to edit books anymore because that takes a
Mhm.
chunk of you. Like that is an emotional journey, especially with people who are self-publishing, doing this themselves. There's a lot of fear. Like it's not just writing words or editing words. It's the whole
Birthing
management of that.
something.
Yeah, it is. It's a project management thing of its own. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to start taking like small jobs, those small, like quick win jobs. Like, I'm going to start writing bios for people and I'm going to start doing some freelancing. I'm going to get on the freelancing platforms. And so I evolved to the Fiverr Upwork lifestyle.
Mhm.
And that was fun. It was like quick stuff, kind of snappy, made you feel a little good. People just throw money at you for silly things. And you start out, again, it's like entry level stuff and then you move up, right? Because you have to start with a low price to get people to. And right, the Fiverr of 7 years ago is so different than the Fiverr of today. Like, that's a whole nother story. But at the time, you could get in there and you could do your jobs and it's like, woohoo. So I was doing that, having a good time, working for a bunch of people. And one day, one of the people I'd done a bunch of jobs for, we so the game in Fiverr is you can't give any of your personal information, right? But if you there are ways around that because your logo's on stuff and people find you on the internet. So one of these clients that I've been working with accidentally says something like, I'll call you. And the bots find it, and within 30 seconds, my entire Fiverr account is gone. I am suspended. I am fired from Fiverr. The girl who got like one B in her life is now fired from Fiverr. I cannot get into it. I am in trouble. I have broken the law. I am a rebel. My life is over. Like, to me, that was the end. I had done a wrong thing,
Wow.
right?
And that
Like,
comes down to 3 words,
yeah,
or really a contraction, right?
yes.
Yeah.
And
Wow.
and I hadn't kept any of these people. Like, I was just enjoying my snappy little freelance life. I hadn't kept anyone's information. It was all in Fiverr. I could not get to the work I had done if I hadn't saved, like if it was stuff that I had edited within the Fiverr space. I couldn't get to anything. I had nothing. And I was like, well, that's it for me. I'm never going to freelance again. I am a failure. I'm done. And I had
Mhm.
built this business for 6 years, right? Like, but that to me was like a point. And so what it did for
Wow.
me is it devastated me and then it freed me to be like, you know what? I'm not going to do this way. I don't have to do this way just because they say I have to do it this way. I'm going to do it
Mhm.
my way.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of the evolution into, you know what? I'm going to go find people. I'm going to find people and I'm going to keep them in my space. And I'm going
Mm.
to, and so that was that evolution. And then tiptoe through a few more years. We kind of phased out the fostering. We adopted two kiddos, and their traumas were such that we weren't going to keep bringing other trauma, inviting other traumas into our space because they deserved that safe hug of life.
Mhm.
And so things kind of settled in, and I was like, you know what, I can do this a little more. And then our favorite time of life for everyone, COVID happened, right?
Mhm.
And again, life is upended, and we're like, what are we doing? But and as a lot of us know, we don't like to say it because it makes us feel ick. Like, I enjoyed COVID. We all got to be home and we were staring at our screens and we had to find a new way to connect and to stay to find people. And so that's why things like this happened, right? Like that's why collaborations are suddenly this big thing. Um,
Mhm.
and that was the turning point for me. That's when my job was like, um, we will have you work, but if you're going to be home, this is different and you're not working the same. And I was like, okay, well, then I'm going to do other work too. And then I
Mhm.
was like, you know what? I don't want to be tied to a 9 to 5 the way I'm tied to a 9 to 5 now.
Mhm.
And so I
Mhm.
upended my life again. and we moved to a lake town in the middle of nowhere. And now I spend most of my time helping people with their words and to grow their own side hustle businesses. So it's kind of a
Mhm.
two-pronged thing. So it's a very long
Mm.
story to get you to I'm okay with words and I like to help people build their side hustles. Yeah.
And
So,
you're not just okay with words, you're like, "Oh, I love it. I
oh,
love
thank
it."
you.
Yes. And so the two words that really stick out for me as you're talking,
Hmm.
I'm totally gonna project this onto you, is
I love it.
resilient and adaptable. Because
Agreed.
I'm hearing, like, all of the changes that you experienced throughout your life and how you just and it's kinda like what we were saying today even before you hopped on, like, "All right, we'll just deal with the next thing." Like, that's
Yeah.
okay, right? And
Yeah.
here we're dealing with the next thing. Yeah.
And I'm going to be honest. I adaptable is one of those words that I've never embraced because I hate change. I hate everything about it. But I think what I've found is that I'm responsive. And so because I
Yes.
can be responsive, I feel a lot more adaptable
Yes,
because I
exactly.
just sit and wait for a minute.
Okay, that's a better word
Yeah.
genius over there. And I
I
would have used them the same way, but yes,
right.
responsive because you're like, "Oh, okay, we have a new situation, we're gonna respond to
Yeah.
this."
I
Yeah,
don't feel like I embrace adaptability enough to claim that word, to be honest.
okay,
Like, I'm
okay.
just not that adaptable. I'm not. Like, when the plan changes for what we're gonna have for dinner, I'm like, "I'm sorry, we're doing what? You're taking me out to dinner? I can't do that. We were gonna have cheese toasties." Like, it's too much. Even if it's a good thing, it's just overwhelming. So,
Yeah. Wow. Well, thank you so much for sharing that.
yeah.
And so can you tell us a little bit more about how you're helping people now with words? Like, what does it
Yeah.
actually look like on a day to day?
Yes. So, and keep in mind that again, because this is my trend, what usually happens is I enter people's space in one of two ways. One, they want to start their own side hustle. So I'm working with like the moms, the or the retirees. I work with two really interesting subsets, moms and retirees. And the moms are those people like they're both in the same boat because they're caring for people, they're trying to run life, and then they have this magic service that they are giving to people. But oh, sorry, I gotta turn this off. But I don't know that they don't always know what to do with, like, they know they want to do something but they don't know what, and they
Mhm.
don't know how.
Mhm.
So I help people there in that entry point where we start to create what their business should be. Like, how, where do you see yourself? How do you see yourself making money? What kind of money do you need to make? Is this something you want to do as a hobby, or is this something you want to do and build an empire? Like, what are you looking for? So I enter people's
Mhm.
space there. And the other place I enter people's space is to help them with their words, their word work, their branding. But I don't usually do that with, it's not the people that have just started out necessarily. It's the people that have been doing this for a few years. They've got a clientele, they've got sales pages, they've got all the hooks that get the look, and something is disconnected. Like, they're not, the things that their copywriters are telling them to say on the page don't resonate with who they are. So people come into their
Right.
space, they click that button and they are like, "Yeah, I'm in." And then they get in the space and they're like, "Well, I don't necessarily want to work with that person because they're not we're not aligned." And so
Mhm.
I help people rewind back to the beginning and figure out what those foundational brand words are so that we can go back in and kind of rebuild and remodel some of those spaces that are very cookie cutter.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm, mhm. Well, in both cases, the way I'm visualizing what you're doing in my mind is this bridge. It's like you're bridging, helping people
I love
for
that.
what they know to, kind of connecting stories,
Yeah.
whether it's through their book or through their side hustle. It's like you're helping them connect
Mhm.
their story and experience to action or to, acknowledgement almost, like bringing them
Yes.
more into themselves, bridging that gap.
Yeah. And I think that people don't realize what they have inside them, whether it's their words. So most of my word work happens like this. We get on a call, I listen to you talk for like an hour, and then I tell you the words that you say the most, the words that you hate, whether you said you hated them or not. And we start building this idea of who you are because you know who you are, but all those pieces are mushed up in there with all the thoughts and the tasks and all of that stuff. So we basically take all the pieces and shake them up in the box, throw them up and let them land, and then we start putting them back together. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what I love about both of those things is I don't tell you anything that you don't already know about yourself most of the time. I
Mm-hmm.
just listen and help you figure it out because life is so noisy and we
Yeah.
need to have spaces where we can just figure it out
Yeah.
safely.
Yeah. I hear that. Oh, and I already know that you're an amazing listener. So that's,
Oh, thanks.
yeah. So I'm trying to imagine like what it's like. We're having a conversation, you're pulling words out. So it's words that I would be saying a lot, or like you're asking me questions about my business and then I'm dropping
Mm,
words and you're like, oh, you really lit up when you said that one.
mhm. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Yep. So it's like, and I'm going to use the example of kind of what we went through with the click thing the other day, right?
Yes. Yeah.
S- So it started with, you were jazzed about, I love the way, the clever way that click stood out, right? The clickish communities. And
Hmm.
then I was sitting with it. And so word work is an evolution. Like it's not a one-time thing, but I was sitting with it and I was like, you know what? Something in me says that some people are going to feel bad about that word. And that doesn't mean you shouldn't use the word. That just means we have to figure out how to use the word. So then I was like, hey, by the way, I wanted to put this thought out there. And immediately your reaction, and this is part of my favorite part of word work, which seems weird. Your reaction was like, oh my gosh, I don't want people to feel that way, but also I love this word. And so what word
It's
work
also my
did,
last name, which is
but look what it did. So last night when you were talking about it, you made sure to say this is a safe place. So basically, we're upending clicks. And that evolved into you're basically saying this is, we're redefining the click. And
yeah.
so, in like a 4-day, two conversation, a couple live space, you've evolved this word and now you own it like the
Yeah.
way that you wanted to own it. And so
Hmm.
it's not always that I'm like, that's not the word you should use. A lot of times it's like, tell me why that word means so much to you so we can figure out how to fit it in so that it attracts people and aligns people. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Wow. And it was so helpful to have that reflection to you because that gut feeling of like, is real for people
Yeah.
with a lot of words and that repels or
Yeah.
attracts. And yeah. Hmm. Okay. So, with what you do with the
Yeah.
words, first of all, how can people, like, is there a concrete service that they can connect with that you offer to help them with their words in their business or their life? And then also I'd love to move into talking about how you collab with people.
Yeah. So, one of the things I do, and I do it in different levels. It's basically I call it word work, but it's just coming into we commit to we get together and we talk and see what you need and what you're ready for, whether that's from a resource standpoint or a time standpoint or just from business development, because I find that people that are new to their business aren't necessarily ready to do the hard word work because they don't know who they are yet in their business.
Mhm.
um, and you need to discover that first. You need to do some
Yeah.
cookie cutter stuff to get to different places. So we meet and we do a little consult and then we decide where you're at. And then I do like one-off services where people can come and join me for like an hour. We do some time together and then I go away and sit with their words for a little bit and then give recommendations. I rarely give recommendations in the moment unless they're like it's something that comes in that moment, right? Like so if we sit down to talk about taglines, I may not have a tagline for you by the time we're done talking, but I
Mhm.
will have suggestions and that might lead to more conversation. And so that's
Mhm.
part of that session. Um and then I have people who I work with for weeks at a time and we build their whole branding. So we start foundationally and then we build it into their copy for their emails, their copy for their landing pages, and all of that as well. And
Mhm.
that's I take those cases on a like they have to be ready, and I have to be ready to work with them in that space
Mhm.
because that's a labor intensive thing, and it's a labor of love, and I want to make sure I'm loving doing it, you know. So
Mhm.
But so a lot of times it starts with a one off. We're just going to get together and talk about words. So I'm always available to do that. And then we kind of can go from there. I'm looking at doing courses or communities, but that's hard in the word space because so often people tell you what you should say, and we have to stop telling people what they should say.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
we have to give them a space, and I know that copy is hard for people, but like Gail has worked really hard on helping AI hear who you are, and that starts with
Mm-hmm.
understanding what your voice is, what your words are, so that you can lean on AI for those things that are hard and you don't want to do all the time. You shouldn't,
Mm-hmm.
in today's world, you shouldn't have to pay um, you shouldn't have to pay a copywriter for like constant stuff unless you're making lots and lots of money and you have great trust in that person. And I'm sorry, copywriters out there, I'm not trying to get you not to have work because I too am a copywriter. I'm an editor slash writer. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that we as copywriters have such important work we can be doing to help people
Mm-hmm.
that we're not relying on writing your emails every day, right?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. When for me, the word epiphanies
Mm,
don't happen like in a vacuum, right? It's
no.
usually in relationship. So it's when
Yes.
I'm explaining my business to somebody else that I'm like, oh, I just said that. Oh, that and that and and it starts getting connected.
Yes.
So I can see why it would be more tricky to have just a straight course. And then I also think for me, it's been like over time. It hasn't
Mhm.
been like it's like not just a one sit down, though I'd love that. And with the right questions, I'm sure it could come out with somebody like you who
Right.
knows what to ask.
Right.
Oh shoot, I'm getting the important call back.
Okay.
Would you tell us how you'd like to collaborate with other
Yeah.
humans? And
Absolutely.
I'll be right
Yeah, and so I'm just gonna finish up the ways we can do word work real quick with I am considering a little bit of a membership space uh, where we would come together each month and we would have word work sessions as a group because I think one of the things we as women uh, really deserve is time together with people who lift us up and time to to work through things together. So it would be more like as a catalyst, sitting there helping people work through those words in whatever space so they need. So maybe one month we're looking at taglines, and one month we're looking at titles, and we can intersperse some other stuff. So that's something I'm working on. I just am still conceptualizing that. And I will say to anyone who's watching, if you are not tuning into all the co-working sessions and all the free time when you can get together with women and people, we have non-women in this group too. Uh, it's important to do that because one, it keeps you from being isolated. Two, every person I've met in this group has so much value to give and they're here to celebrate. I mean, I haven't met one person who's like, that's stupid. You should never do that again. Everyone is celebrating each other, and that's so important because we all have these voices and these fears, and that's what the visibility challenge is about and all of that. I love to collaborate. I love to do group word work. It's so much fun. I did a stint as a guest copywriter, an in-house copywriter for a group last year, and it wasn't the right fit group for me. Like the but the outcomes were great. Those group times, I believe those are the best when we get together. We talk back and forth, and then we bounce ideas off each other. So almost like a work in our session where you bring what you got, and we're going to talk through it, and we're gonna synthesize all the stuff into some sort of product at the end. I also love doing guided things like coming in and working on journaling or that kind of thing. I think that's important because your words and your voice matter, and understanding the practice of getting those words out is really cool. So I love to collaborate like that. I have some freebies. I'm getting into the collaboration space more with freebies and bundles. I have a new fun thing I just got done. I'm so proud of myself. Little pat on my back because I'm really bad in the digital space. Like that's not been my space. I don't need to be great in the digital space right now, but I want to move into that space because I recognize having more time to work with clients and still having these things that bring value and also bring income is important. So I created a word of the day or word a day journal to help people build their brands because some people aren't ready for full brand work, but just a little journal prompt every day is great. So I'm proud of that. And going to share that a little bit more. But yeah, collaborating. I'm all about collaborating with anyone, anywhere. Um, Podcasts. I'm great on the phone or great on the radio. Wanted to start my own. I feel like I'm riffing over here. I was gonna call it Lit by the Lake because I live by the lake now. Well, I don't live right on the lake. I'm like 2 streets back. But I was told that maybe I would get the wrong audience, and then they wouldn't be excited by my ramblings about business life. So I'm gonna have to find a new name for it. Um, but Lit by the Lake. If anyone wants to have a podcast, you're free to have that title. Let's see what else. I my greatest I know one of the questions Courtney was going to ask was greatest collaboration to date, and so I think right now, collaboration wise, outside of my marriage, which my husband and I both agree that we would probably not be married if we weren't married to each other, but since we are married and we love each other so much and we're committed to this, it has been the greatest collaboration. And outside of that, professional collaborations, I honestly, my most epic ones have not been the ones that have made me the most money. They've been the ones where I've made the long lasting friendships and the long lasting connections. So um, I have collaborated, and this collaboration actually hasn't even come to full fruition yet. But DB, who's in this group, she's not very active, but DB is one of my favorite humans, and she and I have collaborated. We were going to do a whole journaling thing. We collaborated in one of Lisa Imel's groups, and I just adore women who look at other women and say, "Hey, I think you could maybe work with people." My biggest collaboration from a monetary standpoint was a collaboration within someone else's mastermind, and I was kind of a guest in residence copywriter, and I took it because it felt good and squishy inside. Hi, do we need to
Hi.
wrap this up?
Uh, Quite soon
Okay,
in
let's
a
do that.
few, but I do have a couple more questions I want to ask you.
Sure,
So
sure.
yeah, quickly.
Okay, so I went over how I collaborate with people, and then I
Okay,
rambled
awesome.
for a while. I didn't tell any jokes, so I don't think we lost anyone, but
I love your jokes though. Keep going.
oh,
Um,
jokes.
well, so I guess that the big question is what is the best collaboration you've ever participated in your lifetime?
So I just answered that. I
Oh, you did?
said, well, first I said, and I feel like this is the answer, right? But so my husband and I, not fans of like marriage as a whole, like it's just hard, but we love our marriage. And so I feel like that's been a huge collaboration because it brought all of these adventures that I never would have had, right?
Yeah.
And our kids and this like so for example, and then I'll get to like the professional part. I know we need to go, but my husband is from Gary, Indiana, very urban. I'm from the middle of
Mhm.
the country. I mean,
Mhm.
and so we lived in Fishers, Indiana for the longest time. It's suburban. It's so like hospital corners. We were like he was the only person of color in our neighborhood. It was very surreal. And
Wow.
so he's like, I'm never living in the country. I'm never living in a small town. I cannot do it. Okay, I support that. So we were driving around looking at houses because we were going to move up north because our parents are aging. And he's like, let me take you through this little town. I dated a girl there once. And we drive through this town. And it's the smallest town. It's the craziest small town in the world. Culver, Indiana, look it up. It's like the
Oh,
strangest.
I've been there.
Have you been here?
I think yeah, because we passed through Indiana to go to all
Yeah.
sorts of different sports things.
Yeah, all the sports things.
Yeah.
So Culver, one thing to know about Culver is we have this academy. So we have a lot of rich people that live around the lake. And then we have this small town. And then outside of town, there's like this big socioeconomic disparity. So we have the
Mm,
so during the winter, there's no one here because all the older folks go down south. The academy people are locked away in the academy. The people with the lake homes are not here. It's not pretty out. And so it's like a dead zone. But this was summer and we were driving down the little hill down Lakeshore past the little lake, and my husband said, I could live here. And because we're such good collaborators, within 8 weeks we had sold our home and bought a home up here. Like that's just how
mm,
our life works. It's an adventure, right? And he
mhm,
makes me be adventurous, and that to me is a great collaboration. But what I was saying about other
mm.
collaborations is My best collaborations are not the ones that have brought me the most income or even grown my list the most. For me, they're the collaborations that have grown my circle of influence, even if it's just one person at a time. So connecting with
Mm-hmm.
DB Waltrip has been huge because she's impacted
Mm-hmm.
my life personally and
Mm-hmm.
professionally. Condi
Mm-hmm.
Bartlett, personally and professionally, just so those kind of collaborations have been huge. The ones that brought me the most income or the most connections from a business standpoint, so far I haven't had the best luck with those. They just weren't my thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to compromise the me of it all for
Mm-hmm.
the money of it all. So,
Yeah. Oh
yeah,
man, I love that. That's kind of blowing my mind in terms of redefining what collaborations can be
yeah,
and maybe should be. Like what I'm hearing you say is it has to have like a personal,
for me, yeah.
relational.
But I'm also in a very privileged space where that's okay, right?
Yeah.
Like, I need to grow my list because I need to make money. Because if I don't make money, my family suffers. And my husband says, like, that this isn't going to be, like we all have
Right.
partners or my wife or whatever. We all have these partners and we're accountable to them. And so I'm in a very privileged place where I can say, I'm just here for the people
Yeah.
and the money's great too, right? Like, but for me, that's where the monetary success has come too. Because when I try the
Mhm.
other way, it doesn't work. It's this lack, and I just don't survive. So,
Mm. We may have to have you in just to talk about your way of collab. We need a name for it. We need a word for
ooh,
it. Your way of collaborating.
I like it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yes.
I just want to apologize that I've been in and out. And just for folks watching, I don't normally just disappear in the middle of the Collab Chronicles. I had a thing I'm dealing with that is very time sensitive and unfortunate. And Lizzie was amazing in just taking it over and rolling with it. So thank you so much, Lizzie, for being here. I'm going to pop this in the group, and I would love it if you have any links or things you want to
Sure.
share to
Yeah,
just go ahead and feel free to go nuts and just put it in the comments of
I
this
love it.
post.
Let's do it. So it's just
Yeah.
thegeekyfreelancer.com takes you to my little linkish tree thing and Kajabi. So I'll put that in there.
And is that the best way for members to find you, or how would you like them to reach you if they want to
Um,
collab?
you can find me in Collaboration Station as well. And um, I have a group for kind of for freelancers. It's kind of evolving into something else, but um, yeah, I think Collaboration Station, or just go to my little link tree, and all of my stuff's there. All of my social media, how to get a hold of me, it's all there. So, and if you just want
Okay.
to chat, I keep space open for like 20-minute connection calls. How do you do's? So,
How do you do's? All
all right.
righty. Well, thank you, Lizzie.
Thanks for
Have
having
a
me.
beautiful rest of your day. And everyone, be sure to reach out to Lizzie for some words.
You too. Bye. Thanks.